All right, welcome back to the $1 Million Tipping Point podcast. Today on the show, we have Jenn Drummond. She elevates devoted and determined entrepreneurs to go beyond a life of success to a life of significance by inspiring them to create a thriving business and lasting legacy of their own through her 40-day challenges, book, and podcast. So Jenn, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I hope, per usual, that you're going to give us and the audience some advice on how to grow their businesses to 7 figures, per usual. But I'm also hoping to learn a little bit more about you, which is you're a world record holder. So we're going to talk about that. And what are you a world record holder of? You're a mom of 7 kids. 7. The last person I interviewed was 4. And I was like, wow, that's impressive. You know, I'm one of 4, but like she had 4 and she ran her own business. I was like, wow. But this is like, how do you manage and balance motherhood and entrepreneurship? So I hope we talk a little bit about that. And then you said you have 7 strategies you use to build a thriving business. So I'm hoping that can also help our audience if you could go into that a little bit. But for our audience, don't forget, have you downloaded the Money Mapper yet? The link is at the bottom of the show notes. And this is a plug and play worksheet that will help you discover financial independence as a business owner. So Jenn, tell us a little bit about your business right now. Where does it stand?
Yes. So I have a business that does the masterminds, the retreats, the speaking. I have a book coming out. I run little challenges and then have an online course that lines up with the book.
How did you find time to do all that?
Yes. I mean, lucky for me, my world record was in mountaineering. And so I was on mountains with a lot of downtime. And since I'm so used to being go, 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 it gave my brain something to play with while I was at base camp waiting for weather to cooperate.
Wait, but did you actually have like Wi-Fi at base camp? So were you able to, or just did you have your laptop and were you able to create a course and do all this? Or did you just have like a notebook and you're just writing down everything?
So you're writing down stuff on some, like when you're at Everest, you have Wi-Fi at base camp. It's not fantastic, but it's something if you need something sent to you. But a lot of it for me was just idea dumping and then getting everything on paper and then kind of organizing things into different categories and places. And when you write a book, you're writing the book to take the reader on a journey so that they can help apply the principles that you learn to their own lives. So it's very conducive to turn that book into a course because you're kind of already thinking of it as a course at some level, right? The book is, hey, you're going to do it yourself. The course is a little bit more hands-on, but similar material.
Okay. So your world record is in climbing the second highest summits on each of the 7 continents, right?
Yes.
They're called the 7-second summets. Okay. So which are which are those?
Sounds like a tongue twister. Yeah. So let's back into that a little bit. I was in a horrific car accident in 2018 that should have taken my life and didn't. I was actually plateaued a little bit in my life at this time. I think all of us find us there just going through the motions. I was staying home with my kids and I told myself I'll get back into the business world once my kids go to college. But right now, this is just the season of motherhood. That car accident woke me up to the idea that, hey, I don't get to choose when I leave, but I sure get to choose how I live. And I'm choosing to live not to my fullest, right? I'm not emotionally fulfilled. I'm not challenging myself. I'm just kind of going through the motions. And so 2019 became this big year of who am I? What other ways do I want to contribute to this world? What's my legacy going to look like? And I started really deep diving into why was I saved? Why am I here? 2020 came and I was turning 40. So I was looking over my bucket list that I created and climb a mountain stood out as something that I wanted to do for my 40th birthday to launch that next decade of life. So I asked friends that were into mountaineering, hey, if you could climb one mountain in the whole world, what would it be? And the general consensus was a mountain named Ama de Blanc. Okay. It's the Paramount Pictures logo. So if you've seen a Paramount Pictures movie, you've seen the mountain in there that has the stars around it. Right. And I'm like, oh, that's a great mountain to climb. Of course I want to climb that. It's in Nepal. It's all these things. And so I was training for that. COVID happened. I became a homeschool teacher to all my kids because school shut down. And one of my little guys was struggling with his homework. And so I'm giving him the parent pep talk, like, we do hard things. You've got this. And he looks at me, he goes, if we do hard things, why are you climbing a mountain called I'm a Dumb Blonde instead of a real mountain like Mount Everest? I said, "Ama de Blom, not I'm a dumb blonde," right? But thanks, honey. That's cute. And so he finished his homework. We looked at Everest. He went to bed. I found myself still looking at Everest. And I thought, what? If he thinks this is the hardest mountain in the whole world, I'm going to climb it to show him that whatever our mountain is, whatever our Everest is, we can climb it. So I call a coach gets me ready. He's like, "Hey, buy this book about becoming an uphill athlete." So I do. And in the front of the book, there was this lady who got a Guinness World Record for doing something in the Alps. And I remember telling my coach, like, I could have done that. Like, I can suffer. And if I got a Guinness World Record, my kids would think I'm cool. And my coach is like, "Okay, fine. I'll think of something." And a few weeks later, he called me back. He's like, "Hey, I think you should climb the 7-second summits." And like everybody listening here, I'm like, "I don't even know what those are. What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Listen, it's the second highest point on each of the 7 continents. It's harder than the first 7. It's only been done by one male. You'd be the first woman to do it. And you said you wanted to do hard things, have a life of significance, and like help others." He goes, "I think this is great. And think about it, 7 continents, 7 mountains, 7 children sounds like a jackpot." And I'm like, it does sound like a jackpot. Maybe I should look into this. And so that's how I started on that quest. And I share that story because I think sometimes timing lines up, our emotions line up, things line up where maybe something feels totally out of the box. Like I'd never slept in a tent before. I hadn't really climbed a mountain before. And I felt these whole body yeses. And so I kept leaning into that and saying, okay, well, why not? I'm going to die someday anyways. Let's try something epic and do this thing. And so as a business owner, these concepts or these ideas can come out of like what feels like left field. But if you're getting this whole body yes, then explore it. Give yourself permission to see what happens. And so I did, and all this other wonderful stuff has started to come into my life.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Crazy.
So how old was your youngest when you decided to embark on this?
My youngest were 8 at the time.
Okay. Okay.
So pretty young.
How did that, okay. So
Yes.
you had the car accident though. So what I'm trying to get back to is like, you had the car accident and you realized, oh my gosh, why am I should be doing more. Like I shouldn't be waiting for this like endpoint of like, oh, when my kids are in college, like I should be doing it now. And so then doing it now, did you decide to jump back into business or did you decide that was going to be the mountain climbing, your bucket list?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think I decided anything at that point. I just decided that, wow, right now I'm a model for what my kids can do life like, right? They're my kids. They're watching me. They're getting permission to do their life based on what I'm doing with mine. And I realized that I was putting my life on hold. And I thought about it. I'm like, I don't want my daughter to be my age and put her life on hold. I want her to live her life and do her truth, whatever that looks like, no matter what people think. And so the only way she's going to have the courage and know how to do that is if I demonstrate that for her. So I lost myself, which a lot of us can lose ourselves in our business or in our families or in all of our roles. So 2019 became this big year of like, who am I again? What color do I like? Where do I like to go for dinner? What kind of impact do I want to have on this world? I already have a business that's running well. So I have the flexibility, like now I can do something that's maybe more of a passion project and less of a financial project.
Okay.
And so then what would that passion project look like? And I had no idea. So I started being like, okay, what do I want to do if I was to die in the next 5 years? I want to try pasta in Italy. I want to climb a mountain. I want to put my toes in the ocean in the Caribbean. Like just things that you're like, this world's here for us to use. What am I doing?
Okay.
And so that kind of led into the mountain thing. And then the mountain thing kind of kept growing. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I want to travel. That was going to take me to 7 different continents, 7 different countries. I have this pursuit that I'm going to climb a mountain. I'm a mom of 7. It doesn't make sense, right? Like, how does a mom of 7 climb this? And if it doesn't make sense to you, it starts getting you curious about what else am I believing that doesn't make sense? And now it opens the door to different possibilities.
That's amazing. What do you think was the hardest mountain that you traveled or climbed? Climbed. Well, I guess you travel it too, but the highest mountain that you climbed.
The highest mountain I climbed was Everest, right? The hardest mountain I climbed emotionally was K2. The hardest mountain I climbed physically was Mount Logan, which is the second highest point for
Okay.
North America. Yeah, right. There's different challenges. Each mountain had its own thing, for sure.
And then you took so to shift this a little bit, you took those challenges that you had and you created this business out of it with these 40-day challenges. And you actually have one of the challenges is called Everest, which is really
Yes.
cool. So
Yeah.
what did you take from climbing these that made you think like, okay, I'm going to create this into these 40-day challenges for other people in these workshops that people can take what I've learned and apply it in their own lives? When did you come up with that idea? Was it specifically on one of the mountains or was it just like,
Yeah, no, here's like, I mean, it's funny how things just happen. So, for example, my 40-day parenting connection challenge, I came up with that for myself because I was going to go climb Everest and I was going to be gone for 3 weeks. I've never been gone for 3 weeks before. And so, you know how life can get busy, but if you have something that you have, I'm a good to-do list person. So, the 40 days before I left, I came up with activities that I would do each day with my kids to connect with them. That would be simple things. Like, for example, a 30-second hug, right? You can actually feel their bodies kind of melt in your arms after 20 seconds because we're
yeah,
just not used to being held that long. Or one day I did breakfast with candlelight. Right. So we just had a candlelit breakfast and everybody had to eat breakfast by candles and they thought it was the coolest thing in the whole world or whatever else like that. And it was just these little things that made the ordinary extraordinary. And when I was done climbing, my daughter was like, "Oh, are we not going to do the 40-day challenge anymore?" And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't," like they loved it. Right. So I'm like, "Oh, you know what? We'll still do it. And in fact, we'll invite other people on the journey with us." And it's a 40-day sprint of connecting to your kids or connecting to whatever challenge you sign up for that allows you to know, like, okay, this isn't this huge thing that I have to undertake. It's not this huge thing that's going to take up my whole day. It's a 40-day quick little thing that allows you to plug into the people that you love most. The Everest challenge came about because when I went to Everest in 2021, I summited. I had a whole bunch of friends that didn't because it was a year that there weren't a lot of summits because of the weather and all these other kinds of things. So when it came time for Everest in 2022, all my friends were getting ready to go back. And I was so jealous. I'm like, I want to go back. It was such a fun experience. Like climbing Everest it's very special. It's super fun. I loved it. I'm like, okay, well, I can't go back, right? I'm a mom and I have all these things going on. I've already climbed it. I'm like, I'm going to climb Everest from home with my friends. And I'm going to climb it over 40 days. So it doesn't take up, my entire life. And I'm going to invite other people to climb Everest with me. I have a whole bunch of cool footage from the first time that I went. And then I take people like every day we do like different amounts of climbing and it's like silly places that you get it in. And it's silly ways to get it in. So you can understand the compounding of simple little steps can add up to a summit of Mount Everest. I mean, I think
oh,
over the
that's
40
cool.
days, there might even be 7 rest days where that's a day to acclimatize and check in and ask yourself, like, how you doing? What's going on? And all those things that you need to do to have a successful summit. And that challenge, like people love it because they love to be able to say, like, I climbed Everest, or they get their office and their whole company to go do it together. And then at lunchtime, they add in a couple steps between meetings, right? They'll go up a flight of stairs and come back down. And that adds up.
Yeah. Those are really cool ideas. So what you talked to us about the parenting and the Everest challenge. Now, what about the recover and recharge 40-day challenge and the leadership 40-day challenge?
Yeah. So for me, I'm a fast start and a hard stop. So it's easy for me to be a human doing. It's hard for me to be a human being. And so the 40-day rest and recover is just that. It is, okay, I'm going to have this intention of being aware. I'm going to have this intention of slowing down. It teaches you about trigger meditations. It teaches you about, okay, today I'm going to have my cup of coffee by myself with no interruptions for 5 minutes. And just these little teeny tiny things that allow you to dilate time and slow down to go fast.
Yeah. I struggle
So
with that
that
too. 100%.
I do. I'm so bad at it. But when if it's on my to-do list, it's getting done. So all
Yeah.
of a sudden it's like, so that's that one. And then the leadership challenge is we're all leaders. Wherever we are in our life, somebody's looking up to us, somebody's watching us, somebody's getting ways to do life by just being around us. And so it's 40 days of little things that you can do to check in with yourself to make sure, am I showing up? Am I recognizing that I'm a leader in this? Am I asking for what I want? Am I demonstrating who I am and how I can help and how others can help me? And so
Mm.
that's a 40-day challenge. Again, quick little check-ins that allow you to have an intention for the day and then make sure you do it. And then the next day you have a new one. And the people who have done it have, like, they've gotten job raises, they've changed positions, they've done, I mean, it's amazing what can happen with these teeny tiny little steps.
Can you give us an example of like the best success story you've had so far from one of your clients?
Oh, I mean, it depends what you consider success, right? Like, so all of us have a definition of success. For me, I had an Everest person, because this is a 40-day challenge that probably takes less than 20 minutes a day, get off diabetes medicine and lose 8 pounds. And like be able to, like, the best part was he was able to run a lap with his grandkid at his kid's school. So the
Oh,
kid,
that's
he's like,
so
my his
special.
grand, like, so those kind of moments are magic, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
but get off diabetes medicine. I'm like, were you doing nothing before? This is amazing. So
That is great. And sometimes all it takes is like the right program, right? To inspire someone and to say, you know what, I'm going to put my heart and soul into it. And it's just like the right timing, the right program that they feel a connection with. So they must have with yours to start doing it so
yeah, like
consistently,
it
which is
clicked, right? It
amazing.
was the right
Yeah.
timing. It was the right commitment level. It was the right nudges. It was
Yeah.
enough flexibility, but enough structure. Like there's all those little pieces that go into it, and people make it what they want it to be.
So talk to us a little bit about having 7 kids and balancing entrepreneurship and motherhood. And you talked about like, that guilt you felt like I'm leaving for 3 weeks and like I'm doing all these things for myself and I've got these kids. What's the age of the oldest and the youngest? Like what's the age difference?
So right now, my oldest is 17 and my youngest are 10. So I have 7 kids in 6.5 years, basically, because I have a set of twins in there.
Wow.
So 5 boys, 2 girls, super busy. But everybody's kind of at the same stage of life. So that helps a little bit
Yeah.
with what's going on. And when they're that close in age, they kind of help parent each other. Here's the rules. You let everybody else help implement them. And that's being a leader, right? Like you set the rules and then you have your team help implement it and hold it accountable. You can't be doing all things all the time. I'm a big delegator. So I'll look at my calendar and say, okay, what's working? What's not? What can I delegate so that I can do more of what my zone of genius is? So with parenting, for example, I don't cook. I don't do laundry. I read stories. I help with homework. I drive kids to practices. At one time, I thought, you know what? It's not worth me driving to practice. That's a lot of time in the car. I'm sure every mom can relate. And then I realized that's when all the cool conversations happen. So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I actually want to drive because that's when I get to connect with them and I don't have as many things competing for their attention. And so what are other things that I can delegate off my list so that I can do the things that I feel get the biggest bang for your buck?
So do you guys have a cook come and someone who does the laundry or is that your husband that does that?
Yeah, we have someone that helps with it for
Okay.
sure. Just that when you're growing a business, you can't do all the roles. So
Yeah.
to grow a business, you have to start hiring out things that are below your pay grade or not in your zone of genius. When you run a household, you need to do the same thing. Okay. Am I doing laundry where I could hire somebody for $25 an hour to do that? Why would I
Yeah.
spend time doing that when I have 7 kids that are on an expiration clock of when they leave my house?
Yeah, and I've interviewed women before who that is a struggle for them to actually take like bite the bullet, say so to say, and decide to hire someone in the house because they struggle with that um traditional role that the wife and the mom is supposed to be the one doing all of that and yet they're the business owner and they feel like they
Right. Well,
still
like
have
you
to do
can't, like, so
it
you're going to,
even.
right. So you're going to question the traditional role on one side, but not the other. Right.
Yeah,
Like if you're a female business owner, that's not the traditional role. And so
right.
you just have to look at the whole thing as a big ecosystem of my most valuable asset is my time and my relationship with the people that I care most about. How am I building my business and my family and my personal life to support those things?
Mhm. Agree. So what are the 7 strategies you use to build your business, and how can that help our audience?
Yeah, so we'll get into some of them. Some of them you can read the book or join one of the programs. But one of the biggest things that I learned is big mountains take big teams. So if you're trying to do something big, you need people on your team to make that happen. You can't do all the things. You'll run out of energy. It won't be fun. You will be carrying too much of the work. And then all of a sudden, it's not going to get to where you want to go. And you're going to start second guessing. Oh, maybe that goal is too big. Oh, maybe I don't want to do that. Oh, whatever. When you start having those feelings, I encourage you to stop and say, like, who can help? Who can
Mm,
lighten my load? Who can help carry this so that I can climb this mountain and make this big thing happen? So
mhm.
we don't know any huge companies that are a one-man band.
Right. I tell myself that sometimes too.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's hard. It's hard. And sometimes, like, we keep thinking it's a season. Oh, this is just a season of busy. Well, if that season of busy, like, goes more than, you have to have check-in points and be like, okay, if it goes longer than 6 months, it's not a season. It's a new thing. We need to step up the plate, right? Like, we need to
Yeah.
fill in that gap so we have more time to do us. Another big thing that I talk about in the book is waving your flag. It's
Mm.
really fun to wave our flag at the top of the mountain,
Mhm.
right? It's like, hey, here I am. I made it. This is awesome. Blah,
Well,
blah,
I've
blah, blah,
never done
blah.
it, but I believe you. I'm not much
Yeah.
of a
I mean, like, at the
hiker.
top of a business, right? Like, once your
Yeah.
business is doing well, it's fun to talk about. It's not fun to talk about our business when it's like sucking capital, taking our time, isn't working, and, all the things that go on. But we have to learn to wave our flag during our entire pursuit. Here's what I'm trying to do. Here's how I need help. And here's how I can help. And so this played out for me on the mountains, where Mount Kenya is a pretty technical climb in Africa. And I was worried about having the technical skills. But then I had it on Instagram that I was trying to become this world record holder, which is not my personality. My personality would rather tell you at the end than during the process, but I got convinced to share along the way. And a charity reached out to me and said, hey, listen, we need to deliver this ambulance to a charity in Kenya. It looks like you're going there for a climb. Do you know when you're going? Could you help be the face of our charity so we don't have to spend money to send another person over? I'm like,
Oh.
yes, of course I'll help with that. They wouldn't have known that I could help them if I didn't say, here's one of my mountains that I need to go climb. Right. So then they reached out to me. I could go help them. I said, hey, do you have people on the ground there that would know a good person to climb with so I can climb this mountain with somebody from Kenya? So then they were like, it was this perfect relationship that I helped them, they helped me, and we both got what we needed. And so when we're willing to wave our flag and say, here's what I'm trying to do, that starts attracting things that can help you get the thing done.
Yeah. Be loud about it. And I struggle with that too. Especially with social media, like you were saying, that resonated with me, right? Because you're like, I didn't want to be posting about that. Like, that's just not me. And like, who has time, honestly? But like, I know that because the more people can connect with you, the more you will attract, like you said, what you need to attract. Yeah,
Yes.
I
Yes.
get
Yes.
that.
Yes.
So I saw in your profile that you have over 21 years of experience in financial services, and you had already built a successful business worth 8 figures. Can you just tell us about that briefly so our audience can
Yeah.
understand some of your experience?
Yeah. So I got into the financial service sector right out of college. I remember showing up to my job on the first day of work and I'm like, hi, I'm Jen. I'm the new financial advisor. And they're like, okay, great. Here's your desk with a phone book and a booth and you'll just start dialing. I'm like, oh no, I'm actually a financial advisor. I'm not called call center. Like, oh honey, it's the same thing. How do you think you're going to get your clients? I was like, what? How did I miss this memo? Are you kidding me right now? So I went to sit down. I started dialing. It was like the worst experience ever, but I promised myself that I would stay for a year no matter what. And I talk about it in my book too, a little bit about committing to the commitment. Once we say, hey, I'm going to do this for a year, I'm going to do this for whatever. Now our brain isn't using energy to try to get us out of said activity. Now our brain can use energy to figure out how to make said activity easier, more successful, creative, whatever. And so I was staying. And then I learned, like, I bought one of those little pop guns that had an ice cream cone thing on the end. And so like anytime somebody said no to me, I shot them and then I put the ball back on and then I called the next person and then I shot them. So I could take my power back, right? And be like, fine, I'm going to say no to you too. Boom. And then go. And that's the thing. Like if you can make something fun, we have way more energy to do that thing longer. And then we have way more likelihood of having success. And so I ended up being successful in that field. And then I decided to go out on my own, made a number of mistakes in that process, which is something we all do, but built that business up to where I hired myself out of a job because I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And so that was my motivation. I was having kids. So then I was like, kept saying, okay, what can I hire out? What can I hire out? What do we need to do? And when you want something bad enough, you figure out how. Right. And
Mhm,
so I
mhm,
wanted that. Now, once I got to the stay-at-home mom thing, I liked it for a while. And then I realized, it really wasn't what it was cracked up to be. I need to get back into something, which is why I got into mountaineering and then got into this coaching
mhm.
stuff. But yeah, like that was the foundation. I'm so glad I got into finance first because I learned so much about money, like the
Mm.
time value of money and compounding things and how to invest and how not to put all your eggs in one basket and do all these different pieces that has helped me in everything I've done going forward.
What advice do you have for women who maybe are very career driven and they have stepped back to be a stay-at-home mom and they're struggling and they may not feel fulfilled by that? What advice do you have for them?
Like lean into you because you're not doing anybody a favor by being a stay-at-home mom if that's not what you're thriving in. I'll be
Mm,
honest with you. I remember going to school and there was a holiday party and I showed up at the holiday party and the moms in the classroom had like sweaters that matched socks that matched hair ties of the theme of the party, right? Like I'm like, you have a pumpkin on your sweater. Wow, that's cute, and I will never have a pumpkin on my sweater, but okay. But like, it was one of those things. I'm like, these are not my people. I am so glad that the universe has those people. Like those Pinterest moms are amazing. But I realized like, this isn't my like wheelhouse. This isn't where I shine. This isn't who I am. And the more that we can figure out who we are and just be our authentic selves, we're going to find our people and we're all going to be better off for it. And that's
mhm.
just something that like allow yourself to let your story look different than what you thought it should.
Oh, say that again. I love that. Allow yourself to
To let your
let
story
your
look
story.
different than
I
what you
like
thought it
that.
should. Yeah.
I, str- I always keep saying like I struggle with that. I struggle, but like you build something up and
Y
you're like this
We
is
do
what.
struggle with it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
totally.
Okay. Oh, that was a good one. Um, so you mentioned that you delegate a lot. Tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about your team and mistakes and challenges you've had when hiring and how maybe women can avoid that.
I don't know if we avoid it. I think the mistakes that we have are showing us where we need to improve as individuals. I'm a people pleaser, right? So I like to be liked. That is not a great quality when you're trying to interview people. So I just realized I can't do the interviewing because I always look at somebody and I see their potential instead of seeing what they actually are right now. And so I realized that about myself after I hired like a handful of people that living up to what I thought they would be because I hired them as to what they could turn into versus what they are today. And so I had to bring somebody else on and say, hey, will you interview these people for me? And then let me pick between like two good candidates because I can pick between the last two, but I can't do the first round of interviewing.
Mm.
And that's okay. Like that's who I am. I'm probably always going to be a default people pleaser at some level. I'm getting better at not, but there's no point in denying who you are and trying to pretend you're something that you're not. Just work the system to your advantage. And that's how I had to do that. I made a huge mistake in the beginning of my business where I broke off from this company. So I worked for them for a while, learned the mousetrap, kind of figured things out. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do it on my own. And I wanted like the big office with the big space with my name on the building and like color copy machines and a secretary. I had like all this envisioned. But so I all of a sudden I started putting all my energy into that instead of what actually brought people in the door. And I'll remember getting like the color copy machine bill. I'm like, oh my goodness, no one's allowed to print color copies anymore. Like we were spending money so fast because I wanted to look a certain way instead of like first having the revenue to drive it to look that way. And ironically enough, like a different opportunity opened up. So we pivoted entirely. And it was like, sometimes we just get so stuck with how it should be that we forget to allow it to be what it is. And my thing is like, build the problem, then fix it. Don't like, you just can't get overcommitted to what it looks like. I think of that movie Field of Dreams, where he's like, if you build it, they will come. It's not how it
Yeah.
works. Okay. It's
I
actually
know.
opposite of how it works. Okay? So I was like, I'm building it and then they're going to show up. So then you're out there like dancing with the silly signs, like, hey, come here, whatever. Right. That's not how it works. First of all, you're going to get all the clients and those relationships and how that works. That's going to tell you how to drive it forward or what to do, but have the problem and then the solution. Don't have the solution before the problem, because your problem will be different than what you planned for.
Yeah, whenever I'm coaching women, like there seems to be a hiccup after they create the website, because it's like, but I built the website, no one's coming to it. And I'm like, yeah, I say the same thing. It's not if you build it, they will come. That's not what happens. You think it is. And I totally have fallen into that trap in the past. Like, yes, I'm going to share with the world my website. And then it's like crickets. And like, no one cares.
Crickets. No one cares about your website. Everybody has one.
I know. How has your leadership and management style changed over the years?
I've gone through phases of it, right? So before I was definitely in your face, like what's going on, micromanaging, blah, 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 blah. And then I went too loose. Like, oh, you're an adult, you know what to do, da, 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 da. And so now I'm kind of like that hybrid of, okay, you have accountability, but you have freedom on how that looks and how it gets done. But if you're not hitting your numbers, then I'm going to come in harder. If you are hitting your numbers, I'm going to back up more because you're doing what you're doing. But it's very much... Sorry,
go
ahead.
I was going to say,
very customized.
Yeah, I was going to ask more about how you transitioned into knowing, because you said you went one extreme, then another extreme, and now you kind of found it in the middle. How did you realize that was the good place to be, right? Like, I'm trying to think for our audience, if someone's like too lax right now and deadlines are being missed, or...
Yeah, you're kind of looking at think of it, if you have kids, right? You can't parent every kid the same way. You can't lead everybody in your organization the same way either. So it's very much a dance of what works for that person, communicating with them, and then having a system that's set up for them. And then I really guard my time as much as I can. So I have a person underneath me who, she's the first line of defense on everything. And if we're going to take a new thing on, I'm like, okay, who's taking them? Because it's not me. And how is that going to work with your extra workload and everything else, and think through that and whatever else. Because I have 7 humans at home. So at work, I can only have a couple people. Otherwise I'm maxed out. Once I get too many people that are my direct reports, everything falls.
I was going to say, because it would be like, you've got the 7 kids and then you've got like another team. It would be just a lot. You just would be constantly fielding questions and answering questions.
Yeah, right. And never on like offense, right? I'd always be on defense.
Yeah.
And, even at home, we have tutors for the kids. So I pay one of my tutors a little bit extra, and I'm like, you're running education. Okay. So I need you to tell me if somebody's falling behind, or if we need glue for report cards, or, like all the things that go on getting these kids where they need to be. I'll buy whatever, we'll do whatever, but I don't want to be fielding the 100 emails that come in from school.
Yeah.
So
and there are 100 emails. I can't, like, I have 2 kids. One of them, only one in elementary school. And I'm like, my God, another email. Like, so I can't imagine times 7.
It's unbelievable. It's embarrassing. Like, do you people have nothing to do except send me emails? And so like, you just have to have somebody to take that. Otherwise, all of a sudden you're spending an hour on emails and it's like, hey, bring in bonbons on Friday. We'll bring them.
We're
just
collecting paper towel rolls. Oh God.
Yes.
One more thing to remember, to give my daughter the paper towel roll.
I know.
Oh, that's so funny. What do you think is the one most important action step or item you took to grow your business to 7 figures?
I was willing to do it slowly. So for me, I was willing to, when you start having this income come in, things start looking exciting to buy, right? Like, oh, I want that new car. I want this nicer house. I want all these things that this money can buy. But if you put that money into something that doesn't return, now you're stuck. Right. So for me, I allowed myself to wait longer to have the shiny pennies that I call them. And I would use that money to hire somebody so that I still kept my free time, because free time
Yeah.
isn't always sitting there with a price tag. And so for me, it was like, okay, if 100,000 comes in, if I go spend it on a car, now I don't have any way of leveraging that. But if I spend 50,000 on another person helping, now how much can that person bring in, and how much does that leverage, and how can I continue to grow that way? So I'm always looking at what am I spending my money on that gives me leverage to continue to grow.
Mm, I like that. What do you think has
Yeah.
been your best and worst investment you've made?
My best investment is myself, and I'm a business owner that, for
What do you mean,
sure.
like
So
hiring coaches for yourself or just even taking time off for yourself or doing the mountains? Like, what do you mean specifically by that?
yeah, like I think hiring, like making sure that I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm like from a mentor to a therapist to an outside business person giving advice, looking at it from a different perspective than me in the middle of it. Just always doing things that optimize my life and getting opinions from others and then draining them against my own. And then the worst decisions I've made have always been in things that don't do return. Like, okay, so I bought a fun car. The car is fun for a little bit, but then you're kind of like the novelty wears off and it's not as exciting. I like growing things. I like building things. I have that personality. So just catching to myself of like, is this going to really give me long-term satisfaction, or am I looking for like the high for the next 5 minutes?
Mm.
And just trying to make decisions that are giving you that long-term return versus the short hit.
My husband would totally disagree. He's such a car guy. He's like always thinking about the
Well,
next
and
car
like
he's
if
going to
that's
buy.
your thing, that's your thing, right? If that's
Right.
what's going to keep you motivated, and you're like, hey, I go into my garage and every time I'm in that car, I celebrate my success and I feel so good about myself because I created this and this is what I get to have to show that. That's different. I'm not a
Yeah.
car person. I'm a
Yeah.
vacation person. So when I'm on vacation, I'm like, hey, all this work allowed me to be here. Amazing. I'm going to keep busting my buns to get here again.
That's what I tell my husband too. I'm always like, because I'm not much of a shopper. I don't shop for clothes that much. I'm pretty boring in terms of money, but I love to take a nice vacation. I like you, I don't really go camping. I want to be able to like afford whatever it is, the nice hotel, the nice whatever, the
Yes.
Caribbean island or wherever, and not feel guilty about it. Not be like, that's my thing. So I totally get it.
Yeah,
You and I.
100%. Like when I go on vacation, I want somebody that can bring me food by the pool.
Yeah.
If we're at a place that can't
Yes.
bring me food by the pool, we're not at the place I want to be at.
I get that. I get that. Um, so tell me a little bit, how do you try to stand out from other competitors in the coaching space?
Um, I don't even know if I try. I think I just do me. I am unique already because I have a successful business and I'm into outdoors. So my footage, right? The videos or the photos that I can show are like eye-catching photos because not everybody has those extreme environment pictures to use. And so I'll use those photos and I'll tie a story back to everyday business with it. And it just allows that extreme image to kind of capture your attention. And I
Mhm.
mean, it's one of those things where the coaching business works, right? And it's been around forever, keeps growing, everything's doing well. So as long as you give yourself enough runway to have time in the industry, you're going to do fine. Because
Mm.
eventually you're going to find your people and you're going to do a good job. And then that person's going to recommend somebody. And then that person's going to recommend somebody. And it grows. You have to give yourself enough time in the industry for your name and you kind of to develop your signature.
Mm. So for this business then, since we're talking about the coaching business, what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes you've made or challenges you've had? And how did you learn from that?
So I built a course, or like I built this like retreat, and then I tried to market that retreat. instead of saying, hey, I'm putting together a retreat. Here's like the core of what we're doing. If you're interested, apply, and then apply, let them select activities that they want to do. So now all of a sudden I'm building the retreat based on the participants that are coming versus me building the retreat, having all the things fixed and plugged and played. Does that
Oh,
make sense? So it's like, hey, I'm doing this
interesting.
leadership retreat and we're going to go do a rappelling experience in St. George. And so then I had like all these people lined up and all this thing to do. And I mean, it was good, but my better retreats have been, I'm going to do this leadership retreat. What interests you? And if it like people could say like public speaking or social media or learning LinkedIn or doing these different pieces. So then once I had a fewer people signed up and 3 of them or 4 of them said LinkedIn, I knew to bring a LinkedIn expert.
Mm.
And so during one of the coaching sessions, so now when I'm advertising the thing, I'm like, hey, and we're going to have this LinkedIn expert there to help you with LinkedIn. Then that brought some other people in and they're like, hey, I want to start getting into speaking. Okay. So then we brought a speaking coach in. And so they could work on their stage skills of, hey, you're going to have to give a 5-minute presentation and anything you want, and we're going to help you on stage. And so then all of a sudden it was like, it was structured a little bit ahead of time to give them an idea of what they were doing, but it was enough flexibility that we could plug and play pieces that the people coming got exactly what they wanted.
Mm. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if the last time that I've really looked into retreats, it was probably pre-COVID, but I feel like most of the days were planned, but there were usually like an afternoon or two where there would be like, tell us what you want. Tell us what you're looking, and there would be like four options, right?
Yeah.
And I do
Yeah.
remember that, but it's been a while. I've not even thought about that because now I have
Yeah. So
2
I'm like,
kids.
even when I'm putting the date out there, right? So I'm putting the date out there and I'm like, hey, we're doing a leadership retreat and we're going to do this rappelling experience. So then they have like something cool to talk about at the next work meeting or something like that. They have this really special memory. But then it was like, when you come to the retreat, what are you most interested in learning more about? So then when we were like 12 weeks out, we had it more solidified and now we could start advertising some of the pieces that we added in based on the people that had already signed up earlier.
Mm. How did you build your audience primarily?
I guess social media and speaking, maybe when you're on, like the nice thing about being on stage is if you're doing a speech in front of 400 people, and then those 400 people are like, hey, I saw Jen and she said this and da 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 da. Let's go check this thing out that she's doing whenever. And then someone brings a friend and then someone like that's been able to get me in front of bigger groups faster.
So where do you see your business going in 2 to 5 years?
I see doing more private things. So just being high, like, cause I my time, I'm such a hawk on it. So raising prices and just being like, hey, I'm going to take 2 people on at this price instead of 4 people on at a lower price. So I just see myself keep getting
Mm.
more specialized and more one-on-one and having the fee be able to compensate for the less amount of people that I'm working with.
Mhm. This is not related, but when you said I'm a hawk over my time, I was just thinking about that because I work pretty much part-time because I have my son home with me sometimes. And what do you do with their 7 kids? There's got to be times when at least 3 of them are sick at once and they have to stay home. So like it's bad enough for me when one is sick and I'm like, oh no, this is totally disrupting my life. Like what
I
happens
call it
with
flu season. Okay. We don't have the flu. We have flu season. So when someone gets it, it's like, okay, now it's just going to rip through in the next month of our life. Someone's sick. So that's definitely a thing that goes on in my life. And I don't know. I mean, it just is what it is, right? Like there's always an obstacle. There's always a setback. There's always something that's going on that you need to learn to pivot and make it work through it. And that's what we do.
So does your team help? Do you send out a note and you're like, hey guys, I've got 3 kids out today of school, like reschedule everything. I mean,
I know. I'm like,
like,
I have to like, I'm so grateful for people who are flexible because I don't have the ability to be as flexible. So to me,
yeah.
it's like, yeah, I have a whole bunch of meetings on December 12th that we have to cancel because something came up, and it's like 7 meetings we have to move. And I apologize, but it is what it is. If you can work with me, great. If you can't, it's okay. I mean, then we weren't meant to work together.
Mm. I always, whenever I have a coach, and there's always this line in the contract, it's like, you need to give at least 24 hours notice if you're going to cancel like something, or you might be charged or whatever. And I always have to say, look, I have kids that get sick within those 24 hours and I'm going to have to cancel. Please be forgiving or I can't work with you. So I can't imagine with 7. Like that would just be like so hard, so hard. Have you ever thought about selling your business? Do you have any exit plans?
I do not at this point, because I love it, right? Like I enjoy doing it. It's got enough variety in it. There's enough challenges in it still that I'm not bored with it. At some point, if I decide to do that, I'll look at it down the road for sure. I've been offered on the financial service business to sell that. And I like having a business because it allows a space to maybe even let my kids cut their teeth on things and learn about stuff. And so they're at the ages that I just am not ready to get rid of anything in case there's some interest there.
Mm-hmm. A woman I just interviewed, her daughter's now working and she was looking into selling her business, and her son, one of her sons, was just like, I am so anti-business, and then randomly pivoted, got into marketing, which is what her agency is into, is getting a degree. And then she's like, oh no, maybe I don't have to sell my business. She's like backtracking because her kid was off. So I'm like, actually, I am. And he was like into something else, like sports, something like rehab or
Oh,
something.
totally. Yeah,
Unrelated.
exactly. My kids all think they're into something else until they start trying to make money at it. They might
Yeah.
they might rethink.
Right. So what advice do you have for other women as they're trying to grow their business to 7 figures?
Patience, right? Definitely have patience with yourself. Because when we set improper expectations of how fast we're going to get there, and we read all these headlines out there, we're like, well, she did it, so I should do it. I think we're only getting half truths on a lot of those
Yeah.
stories. So just allowing yourself to let it look the way that it looks, check in with yourself to make sure that you're enjoying your life, and that this is all working in the direction that you want it to go. Because when you are happy and energized, you have a different energy and like the business grows better.
Absolutely. Last year I got really sick for about 8 weeks. And then when I finally was better, I remember like I got so much done and my energy level was so good and my business grew so fast because it was like when my health was there, it was everything. It was like
Everything.
and I never gotten sick for that long before. It was like pneumonia. So it was a long time.
Oh,
And it was just like getting better was night and day. It was gold. What hurdles have you specifically faced in growing and running your business as a woman?
just all the extra things I think we need to balance, right? I have 7 kids and I'm running their calendars. I have my business. I don't play golf. Sometimes I feel like I'm cut out of some of the networking activities because I'm not into that sport. But I don't know. I think so much has changed. There's just all of us have our own setbacks, or all of us have our own challenges. It's just learning how to deal with what we have and take them one at a time.
All right. So here's your moment. Please, if you have anything to share with our audience or where we can connect with you, let us know and we'll put it in the show notes.
Okay. Yes. So if you want to learn about me more, text Everest to 33777. We're going to give you an amazing picture of the Milky Way crossing over Everest Base Camp, which is gorgeous. And then you'll get into our ecosystem and can learn how to play from there.
Ooh, I think that's the first time anyone's ever given us a text to go. Oh, that's so
Woohoo!
cool. I love it.
Yay.
Awesome. Cool.
Well, I think so many people are listening while they're driving. So then anything else, they're like, okay, whatever, I'll find it later. But 33777, text the word Everest, and it's super fun.
I love that the number 7 is in there. And you have a podcast too, right? And you have a book coming out. So share with us those.
Yes. So the book's coming out January 9, BreakProof, 7 strategies to build resilience and achieve your life goals. If you pre-order, you're going to get a bunch of bonuses. Otherwise, be sure to buy it as a New Year's gift to yourself. And then, what was the other? Oh, my podcast is Seek Your Summit. Yeah. So I interview people who've had success and are moving into a life of significance and how they've been able to transition from that to this new area and empower others on their pursuits.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you. So if you could share with us, what is one philosophy, mantra, or quote you try to run your business by?
Ooh, people over peaks. I always make sure that my people know that they're more important than anything we are trying to achieve. And so when you put your people first, it makes climbing the peaks that much easier.
Ah, good. Of course, never heard that one before. That's unique. I like that. Thank you. So thank you again for joining me on this interview, Jenn. And for our audience, if you're listening and you loved this episode and you want to know more about Jenn and you think a friend wants to know too, share it. Share this episode and helps us grow the show. So if you want to find me online, again, I'm on LinkedIn or tag me on Instagram at Virtually Kiri when you share the show. So thank you, Jenn, and stick around to our audience. We're going to have exclusive content just for our newsletter subscribers.